thank you so much for being here. Uh, I really appreciate you making the time for this. I appreciate all of our return friends. It's great to be together in our little community, and this is going to be a very, very special gathering. Tasreen Khamisa is with me, and I can't wait for her to share her story with us all. Before we do that, though, for those of you that are new to Happy Hour for Hope, I want to kind of give you a lay of the land. This is being recorded. So if you would not like your visage being displayed, you may turn off your camera, but we do record them because people unfortunately have to miss them and they like to watch them later. So this is the Happy Hour for Hope YouTube channel. You can go there and watch recordings. And we also have a Facebook page where you can kind of catch up on, I post things there that are just good news, right? Let's see what else. So these are the organizations that we have contributed to. I started Happy Hour for Hope last June when the pandemic was really hitting and there was a lot of loss going on across the world. Wanted to do something about it. And so I started Happy Hour for Hope. And the idea was to create an inspiring oasis for people to gather and also to have a charitable component to it, that we could help out with contributions to people that were really getting hit hard with the impact of the pandemic. So these are the organizations that we've made contributions to. So far, over $6,600 we've contributed, thanks to all of you so much, so much. And some of the organizations that we've contributed to have friends who are here with us today. Like Melanie Nowaki is here from Feeding America, and Marissa is here from Friends of Guest House. Just thank you for your generosity. If you would like to make a contribution, all you have to do is go to happyhourhope.com, happyhourhope.com, and you will go to the website that looks like this. And you can go there anytime and see who my next guest is going to be. We're going to be putting up a link there that will have our videos as well as the YouTube. And here's how you make your donations. You buy a drink. So you can buy a soft drink for $5, beer or wine for $10, all the way up to top shelf champagne for $100. And that actually is your contribution. All of that 100% goes to our charitable partner for the episode. None of it goes to me. This is not a money maker. And so that's how we play Happy Hour for Hope. But you are not obligated to contribute. If you are moved to contribute, that's wonderful. If not, your being here is all we need. So tonight, our charitable partner is the Tariq Khamisa Foundation. And this is the organization that Tasreen is the executive director of, and she's going to tell us all about their wonderful work. I'm so grateful that you're here. I actually learned about you from Stan Grishkevich, who is with us tonight. Stan sent me the StoryCorps episode that you did with Tony. And Stan said, you need to have her on Happy Hour for Hope. And so I reached out, and sometimes when you reach out to people, they reach back. And it's surprising how many times when you do that, they do actually reach back. And so I'm so grateful that you're here. Would love for you to just kind of tell us your story and just take us all the way through to the good work that you're doing. And we do have a video that I think will show. I think, Ian, if that is a copyright issue, I don't think we'll have that on Tasreen's video. So welcome, Tasreen.
Well, thank you, and good evening to all of you. It's still afternoon for me. I'm in San Diego, California. So I just want to thank Andrew and Stan, for bringing me to this happy hour. It's a great idea. I love it. And the fact that you are helping to support organizations that are doing work in the community is really commendable. So thank you. And just the meaning behind this happy hour, I think that we've all just come through one of the most challenging years of our lives. And I think those of us that are even educators and mothers and parents, grandparents, or uncles and aunts, we know that it's been such a challenging year for our children, a really challenging year for our children. And this is the third event I've been asked to speak to with hope in the title. So I feel like that this, need for hope in our lives, especially right now with what's happening in the country, with what's happening around, injustice and, racial injustices and the pandemic, we have to hang on to something, right? We have to. And I think for me, hope has played such a big part of my life over the last 25 years. I think if I did not hang on to some level of hope, I would definitely not be here with all of you today. So thank you for having me. I serve as the executive director of the Tariq Khamisa Foundation, and I'll talk more about who we are and what we do as we kind of move on with the event today. But our purpose is to save lives through creating safer schools and communities. And we do that with the core belief to inspire and educate children in the restorative principles of accountability, compassion, forgiveness, and peacemaking. So just a little bit about TKF, and then I'll have Andrew show our video because it really truly tells our story. We've been around for 25 years. So we were founded in 1995. We've partnered with over 300 schools in the last 25 years and worked with about 600,000 children with our direct service programs, but we've probably reached over 1 million children throughout the country. So we service about 10,000 to 12,000 students a year. We support schools in San Diego. We started very grassroots, and we'll talk about that more. But over the last 3 years, we've really been being pulled to help train educators in other parts of the country in our philosophy of programming, which we'll talk to you a little bit more later. So that's just a little snippet of who we are. And so I think to really know TKF is to know our story. And it really is the kind of the history you need to understand why we do what we do. And so in 1995, my life changed forever when my only brother, Tariq Khamisa, was shot and killed by a 14-year-old boy named Tony Hicks. My brother was a San Diego State University student. He just had a love for photography. He had dreams of working at National Geographic one day. He wanted to be a writer. And my brother was not your desk job type person. Bob Marley was probably our favorite artist to ever listen to. And so that's why I wanted to share that reggae piece with you guys. But so he delivered pizzas part-time to earn money while he was going through college. And it was a gang initiation. And when he got to the apartment building to deliver the pizza, no one had ordered a pizza. And as he was walking back to his car, he was surrounded by a gang. And the 18-year-old gang leader handed a gun to Tony Hicks, who was only 14 years old at the time, and ordered him to shoot my brother. My brother was trying to get away. If you know my brother, he was that person that always stood up for what was right. Had a really difficult time with injustice, and so was trying to get away, and it was one bullet, and it was fatal. My father, Azim Khamisa, pretty much immediately really saw victims at both ends of the gun. he saw my brother Tariq as a victim of Tony, but he saw Tony as a victim of society. And how could we live in one of the most richest countries in the world, the most powerful, and that a 14-year-old could get a handgun and access to it before he could even drive. And he thought, as a society, we've truly failed our young people. And because this happened on American soil and that we were American citizens, he took responsibility for the bullet that took my brother's life. And while the state of California focused on this trial, because Tony became the first 14-year-old in the state of California to be tried as an adult. And so, as a lot of us know, we live in a very punitive society. You know, we love our zero tolerances and our 3 strikes, you're out. And my father didn't feel like that was the right path for this. He felt that we should do something about this. And so he reached out in forgiveness to Tony's grandfather and guardian and told him that he started a foundation in my brother's name. And this was 10 months after my brother had been killed, that my father founded the foundation to prevent other families from suffering the way our family had. And he reached out to Tony's grandfather, plus Felix, and said, "You lost a son, and I lost a son. We can't bring Tariq back." And Tony was sentenced to 25 years in life for what had happened. He was tried as an adult and sentenced as an adult. And if it wasn't for my father's advocacy, he would have been sentenced without parole. But my brother asked that judge to please consider giving Tony parole. And so we'll talk a little bit more about Tony and what's happened and the journey of that. But when I joined the foundation 3 years after this tragedy. So, and I'll talk a little bit about my forgiveness journey, but I was definitely not as evolved as my father. I sat in a lot of pain for several years, and it was really difficult for me to lose my brother. But I majored in sociology while Tariq was still alive. I emphasized in juvenile delinquency. I always wanted to work with young people that didn't have the same opportunity as others because of my childhood growing up. I was born in Nairobi, Kenya, and we fled Kenya because of Idi Amin, and we settled in Seattle, Washington, where I experienced a lot of bullying, and I had a really hard time kind of growing up. And so I always wanted to be a voice and advocate for young people. And I remember when I majored in sociology, my brother was like, "I have no idea what you're going to do with that degree. Like it's not going to go well for you, you know?" And I think now every day I work for my brother. So it's an honor to do this kind of work in his name. But just to talk a little bit about TKF and then kind of go into my forgiveness journey, is that when we started TKF and I joined 3 years later and we started developing programming, it was really with an eye of what would Tony Hicks have needed that night to not pull the trigger? What tools would he have needed that night? And it really forced us to kind of look at all these inequities that we're living with, you know, the school to prison pipeline, one of the biggest ones that I think TKF is really trying to dismantle. Because when we have this punitive lens, especially in school systems, and we continue to suspend and expel our students for behavior due to adverse childhood experiences and trauma, and we continue to dig holes for them instead of pulling them up and inspiring them to kind of start to heal from their pain, start to learn to manage conflict in healthier ways, give them tools to process their emotions, manage their emotions, build their resiliency, and like really help them find their inner strength. We will change the trajectory of thousands and thousands of lives. And we have seen that happen. And our work is really rooted with this restorative lens in all of our programming. And it forces us, when we kind of live in a restorative way, it forces us to look at each other, even when we make the worst mistakes, because we all make mistakes, and our young people make mistakes, and they'll sometimes make mistakes 3, 4, 5, 10 times. But when we have a restorative lens, it's really one that looks at like the human dignity and the humanity in each other. And it looks to answer the question around not what are you doing, but why are you doing this? Why are you cutting yourself? Why are you harming other people? And when we start to really ask questions with a goal to help restore and bring that person back to balance, we really see this shift in culture and climate in our school system. And it helps to really change the pathways for our young people. And we're really rooted in that restorative justice, restorative practice lens, because, you know, when you truly are being restorative, it's not always just making sure the victim is okay and healed. It's also making sure that you heal community and you heal the offender. And when we can heal our offenders, when we can support them as they integrate back into society, we will see them shine and we will see them pay it forward. And that's truly what we did for Tony Hicks. You know, we didn't give up on him. You know, he was incarcerated. He was sent to an adult prison when he was 16, a maximum state security adult prison. But we kept feeding him with love and compassion and empathy and understanding. He made a horrible mistake, but we truly believe that we should save him and he deserved a second chance. And because we fed him with hope and we fed him with love and we fed him with compassion and empathy and understanding, that's what grows. So what we feed is what we grow. And I think if we can do that with people that are behind cells and in prison, we can absolutely do that for the kids that sit in our classrooms and in front of us. So what we do at TKF is we partner with schools and we implement educational programs rooted in teaching the principles of empathy, compassion, forgiveness, and peacemaking. And I won't go so much into the details of all of our programs, because you can definitely look at that on our website and get more information, and happy to talk with anyone offline as well. But what we do is we call this our safe school model. We truly partner with schools and implement programs on different levels. We have individual services where we place mentors at school campuses. And our mentors are really seen as almost this alternative to suspension, expulsion type of process, where when young people act out and teachers are pulling their hair out because they have 100 hats that they wear, and the social emotional needs of our young people sometimes fall to the floor because we're so focused on academic and testing, especially in our mainstream public schools. We are there as that social emotional support for that young person. And oftentimes, I would say 80% of the time when a child acts out at school or in a classroom, they have usually not eaten. They're extremely exhausted. They're sleeping in the floor of an apartment. They are homeless. And so that's why the teacher can send them to our mentor, and the mentor can really kind of get them back where they need to be so they can actually function at school. And the kids that act out the most are usually the kids that need the more love, from what we have learned over the past 25 years. We also do whole school programs with assemblies, and we do individual classroom curriculum. And we also launch peace clubs at schools. So a lot of the kids we work with, they're not like your ASB president, right? They're not your star athlete sometimes. They just still feel like they need to belong. And I think that this need for belonging, like this happy hour, this need to like connect and belong to something, our young people really have that need. And so they go through our programs, and we often find that the strongest leaders, they get these aha moments where they're like, well, we don't have to lead people astray, right? We could actually help kind of, be a part of change, right? Affect change. And so it's transforming them to say, look, you don't have to sit as a victim in your circumstance. You have the leadership skills to affect change. And I think for TKF, we're always saying children are our future, kids are our future in their generation, but I think we have to recognize that young people are leading now. They're affecting change now, and they are leading now. So that program is really to say, look, you already are a leader. We're just here to help kind of guide you. And we've seen young people really transform their schools and their communities kind of with this lens. I'm going to pause because I feel like I've talked a lot. Does anyone have any questions for me at this point? I think before I go into more of the forgiveness and healing piece of today. I think we'll have questions for at the end too. So
I had a question, and hopefully it's a low ball. What age group do you start with when you talk about kids? I mean, or is it a range of ages?
Yeah, so we're pretty much in 5th through 9th grade. So our focus is really middle level. And we found that when we started this work, it was the most underserved population of our young people. Like elementary schools got a lot of support, and then high schools got a lot of support. But middle level, it's like, it's your second biggest window around brain development for young people, right? So like they're picking their lane, they're picking their path. And because like their hormones are out of control, they're going through a lot of internal changes. They need a lot of high support, and sometimes we tend to like let go a lot, right? We think, they're fine, and even like family engagement and family strength, family bonds, family resiliency, it's crucial with your middle level population. And so that's our lane. We get pulled into high school, and we get pulled into elementary school sometimes, and into higher ed, but really stay kind of focused in that middle level.
I think that's really insightful. I agree that it's a huge transition period in your life. We met in middle school. My mom was a middle school teacher for many, many years. So I had a little bit of insight as to like how crazy that time can be in kids' lives. So I think that's very, very smart.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. You met in middle school.
Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah, no, I agree. I think and Tony was Tony was an 8th grader when he took Tharik's life, and that level of peer pressure that surrounds you at that age. And, for Tony, he was craving love, really love and belonging. And he was dealt with in a very punitive way at school, and he was dealt with in a very punitive way at home. And so sometimes, yes, tough love. We've all probably had that, right? With family members or parents. But a lot of times, our young people, they don't need that, right? They need to lean in to someone. They need to know someone has their back. They need to know that they're loved, and that they're special, and that they're worthy. And I think the saddest thing for me in working with young people is the lack of worthiness they have of themselves. And when we do a lot of work in our classrooms around finding our strengths, and you guys may, have experienced this yourself, like name 3 positive things about yourself, right? It's like, sometimes it's so hard for us to do that. And for our young people, it's really hard for them to do that. And so we have to kind of help them see their light. And I think a lot of our work is really rooted in how do you find that peace within yourself You know, how do you connect to your essence, your internal essence? Because that's where you can find your strength. You know, you can find what's right and what's wrong. My dad kind of coined this term called cellular, you know, so not like solar, you know, but like your soul, right? Like how do we stay connected to that? And I think when we started talking about forgiveness in schools 25 years ago, teachers were like, "Oh my God, no way, that's religious. You can't do that," you know. And but I think we've come a long way, right? Where we're like talking about being mindful and talking about connecting with our insides and understanding how crucial that is, and oftentimes helping young people find that connection to themselves, because we all need that in life. You know, I think we all have each other, but we're on our personal journeys. And when you're on that path, you know, you need to be able to tap into those pieces within you. So as we teach this to kids at this young age, it's amazing to see them fly, right? Like they like their step becomes lighter, you know. We talk about, you know, to young people about like the power of being restorative, you know, and we try to teach restorative in a really simple way to young people. It's how do we repair relationships, fix hurtful situations, and heal self, right? So repair, fix, heal has kind of been these three words. And we'll go back to schools like a year later and we're like, what does restore mean? You know, and they're like, repair, fix, heal. Or we'll hear young people say, you know, I'm just not quite ready to restore with you yet, you know, and we're like, what? They're actually getting this, you know, and it's like we have to remember they're sponges. And, you know, I think when you feed them language and you give them these tools, you know, they can figure it out on the playground. And honestly, you save nice fights after school. You start saving lives because people are not pulling out guns at each other, you know, and it's looking at how do we start to like deal with our conflicts in healthy ways. But that starts with us being like healthy inside. And I think that's really where kind of forgiveness comes into all of this, because we all have our wounds, right? And with our young kids, you know, we all have our big boo-boos, you know, and they could be really traumatic things that have happened to us, or it could be an argument you got with your partner, you know, or a teacher or a friend. And sometimes we tend to just swallow and internalize things and just let it sit. And that's what happened to Tony. He internalized so much anger, so much pain, so much resentment, because his childhood life was horrific. You know, his parents were from opposing gangs. He saw his cousin stabbed at the age of 9. His parents were 15 when they had him. And at some point he lost it. He lost it, and he took my brother's life. And for me, for 3 years, I was like in a really rough place. Like I felt like I just didn't really want to function anymore. Like nothing was bright for me, and it was really hard. And it's because I internalized all of that, my pain, my resentment, my anger. I felt like I had to be strong for my parents, and I kind of got into like a deep depression. And then I think I finally realized I was really only hurting myself. And when you think about forgiveness, and my first, I always think about forgiveness kind of in layers. Like if you think, you know, of an onion, and you think about you keep peeling off layers. I finally realized that first layer of forgiveness that I had to peel off was for myself. It had nothing to do with Tony. Forgiving Tony was so I could let go of all that anger and pain and resentment in my heart, because when we hold on to all of that, we like close our heart, right? Like if you close your heart, there's like no room for anything else to like get in there. Like there's no room for light or love or compassion. And once I was kind of able to get there, and it was through some tough times and therapy and praying and journaling and meditating. And all those ways that we can grieve in a healthy way, because I definitely spent 2.5 years grieving in some really unhealthy ways. And I had to stop that, you know, and it was really my father that like really helped me with that, and, you know, asked me to come to the foundation and asked me if I would come and join him. And he's like, isn't this kind of what you wanted to do with your life anyways? You know, why don't you come and do this at TKF? And so I think just that first step to understanding forgiveness is, you know, it's about letting go, and it's letting go for yourself and for your own healing. It has nothing to do with the person that harmed you. I had no relationship with Tony Hicks for 20 years. Nothing. I peeled off that first layer of forgiveness. I let go of that from my heart. I had the courage to kind of come to the foundation and join my dad and Pless. And, you know, the more I served young people, the more I honored my brother, the more I healed. And the more you heal, you can start to peel off some like additional layers, right? And for me, when I was able to peel off some additional layers, I could find empathy for Tony Hicks. And I started to think about him not in a way where I had a lot of animosity, but more in a way of, wow, he must have really been in a lot of pain to have taken Tariq's life. And we know that hurt people hurt people. So if we know that, then we know that healed people heal people. And I really felt like we have a responsibility to let people heal. And that started my kind of journey with Tony. And I left the foundation staff for a long time. I had 3 kids, and I came back to the foundation in 2015 to kind of take the helm again. And at that point, I really felt like I needed to meet Tony. It was a big part of my forgiveness journey. And you don't have to do that, right? To practice forgiveness, it might not be safe for you to meet the person that harmed you or caused you harm. And that should have nothing to do with your forgiveness journey, right? But for me and my forgiveness journey, I really felt like I needed to meet Tony. And so in 2015, I traveled to Centinela State Prison to meet him. I went with his grandfather. But prior to that, Tony and I started writing letters to each other. So we started communicating with each other. And then when I met him, I spent 7 hours with Tony the first time I met him. And when he walked into the room and I was there, he hugged me like really hard, like break your back kind of hard hug. And I just thought I had a lot of warmth around us, even though I was like really nervous before. And I sat and talked to him. He's like a huge teddy bear. He's very soft-spoken, very shy. And we had a lot in common. I found that we were both, I was telling Andrew, I'm pretty shy, you know, I have this like alter piece of me for my work that I gotta pull out, you know, and I'm an introvert and he's an introvert. I went through some childhood abuse. He went through a lot of childhood abuse. I mean, we had some similar things that we talked about. And I just felt at that moment that he should not be in prison anymore. And that started mine and Tony's relationship. And I started advocating for his parole 3 years before his hearing. And I worked really closely with the district attorney's office and sat down with the deputy district attorney for lifers. I mean, his whole job is about keeping people in prison. I mean, that's what he does. And he shows up at parole hearings. And the only reason he shows up there is to make sure that that person does not get parole, right? And so I really had to start with shifting a mindset around giving people second chances and gracing second chances and understanding that Tony had made a horrible mistake when he was 14 years old. And it stemmed from a lot of trauma, and that I felt a strong responsibility to make sure he got out, and that not only to get out, but to make sure he was going to be okay. And we did. My father and I both spoke at Tony's parole hearing. There was a 20% chance that he was going to get paroled, and he did. He got paroled in April of 2019. And God, he's one of the most important people in my life, I guess I want to say. He's my little brother, and he's an uncle to my kids. We talk every day. He's doing really well. He's volunteering at the foundation. He writes a blog for us. He started that blog while he was in prison. Pre-COVID, he was part of our assembly program, and he was guest speaker in our curriculum classes. And he also works as a full-time plumber. And so he's going back to school. He's at City College getting his degree. And he's been focused kind of on his own healing as well in all of this. And so I'm just grateful to have him in my life. And I think the forgiveness journey for me and peeling off that last layer, and when you think about forgiveness and peeling off that last layer, for me, it was with that lens of what can we do for the greater good? Like, once we get ourselves strong and healed, then how do we help change, right? How do we affect change, and what can we do for the greater good, and what can we do for humanity to help kind of make this world more peaceful and more humane and more just? And so I'm really rooted in that space, and I feel like I have two T's in my life. My brother Tariq, who's always guiding me. I feel like he's with me all the time. I mean, sometimes I say things and I'm like, I sound just like him. What's happening, because I know he's so much with me. And then Tony, and Tony and I really support each other in this life right now. He has my back, and I have his back. He knows he can count on me, and I know I can count on him. And he's already paying it forward so much, because the young people that we work with, they see themselves in Tony, and he is a source of hope. He really is. He's a source of hope, and he's a source of light. So I wanted to just share like one last poem with you guys, and then I'm happy to answer any questions, but I thought it would be nice to share this. It's by Maya Angelou. We cannot change the past, but we can change our attitude toward it. Uproot guilt and plant forgiveness. Tear out arrogance and seed humility. Exchange love for hate, thereby making the present comfortable and the future promising. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know, Andrew, I sent him a picture of like our interesting family to share with you guys too, if you wanted to see that. But that, Tony and me and my dad, Azim, and Tony's grandfather, Ples. And so that's our family, and we love each other. So it's nice. It's just been beautiful for our two families to come together.
And I hope you can see that photo there that I've just kind of put on my screen. If you're looking at things in speaker view, you should be able to see it now. Tasreen, thank you so much. One of the things that Jennifer and I were talking about earlier today that we were curious about was with your father. And we were curious to know what it was that inspired him to reach out to Tony. It seems as though, as I was learning about you and your family, that there was a spiritual dimension to it, a spiritual element to his doing that.
Yes, my father started meditating when he was 20. We're Sufi Muslims, and so we're kind of on that esoteric arm of Islam. And a big part of that is, right, that relationship with self and that meditation. And I know he says that played a huge role, because when he found out that Tariq had been shot and killed, he felt like he physically left his body, and kind of went into the arms of Allah or God or higher power, whatever you want to, call that. And really, it was at that moment that came out of his mouth, that there were victims on both ends of the gun. And in our tradition, they say that after 40 days, it's not good to grieve a soul anymore, because what you do is you impede that soul's journey. But what you can do is do good deeds in that soul's name. And that's really what came behind launching the Tariq Khamisa Foundation. Was my father felt he wanted his son to have his soul journey be fueled by a rocket ship, and what could we do to fuel his journey? And that was to do good deeds in Tariq's name. And that's really what we've tried to do the past 25 years. My brother always, from a young age, said he was going to leave a mark in this world. I never understood what he was talking about, but now I do, right? And I think if you look at this whole tragedy with a spiritual lens, then I think we have come to an understanding that this was meant to be. Our families' lives were meant to cross. Tariq was sacrificed, and Tony in many ways was as well. But if it could be for Tariq to leave his mark in this world, and he always had a dream and always said, we have to leave this world a better place than when we entered it. And he was so, steadfast in that. And so I feel that for my father and I, that's what drives us. That's what helps us, I think, wake up every day and has helped put purpose in our life. And we feel that we're honoring Tariq and living out his legacy for him. And that, he did not die in vain, and that we have hopefully changed and saved, many lives of young people.
I have a question.
Amazing. Yeah.
What does Thark mean? There's meaning usually in names.
It's an Arabic. It means star. It means star. Yeah. Yeah.
My wife's name is Noor. My wife's name is
Oh,
Noor.
okay. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. Our names are Arabic. So yeah, thank you.
Star. Huh? Thank you.
Yeah. I was happy to be here with everybody.
Jennifer just made a comment in the chat that he's our guiding star.
Yes. Yes.
Well, Tasreen, thank you again so much for being here. Folks, if you want to learn more about the Tariq Khamisa Foundation, here's their website address. This is Tasreen's contact information. And if you would like to make a donation through Happy Hour for Hope, all you have to do is go to happyhourhope.com to make that contribution. And I want to invite you to our next episode. It is going to be on May 20th. And she's actually on the call with us tonight, Chris Wall. Chris is the founder of the coaching program at Georgetown University. And I contacted her a few weeks ago to talk about something that she's immersed herself in, the field of adult development, also known as vertical development. So it has to do with how we make meaning out of the world and how we develop our consciousness. And so I've been thinking about it lately, knowing some of the research behind this particular field. 70% of the population is at a level of being able to understand complexity in the world that is not sophisticated enough to deal with the issues that we're dealing with. And so I asked Chris if she would come and have a conversation with us about adult development, about vertical development, and what its social implications are. So that's going to be a very cool conversation. And I just want to say one more time, Tasreen, thank you so much for being part of this gathering.
Oh, thank you for
Andrew?
having me.